Hello, everybody. Today we have Deana with us, and I've actually been looking forward to this moment for a long time. Deana, well, we're going to be talking about how Deana went from a stress state to a healing state. And we are going to be talking about the mindset portion and the brain skin portion because that was really impactful, but also how her body was in a really stressed state too. And then not realizing how much the impact that the brain skin connection had on healing everything else that had happened for her. Because she had multiple diagnoses from specialists. Like she was the top specialist for Lyme disease. She was dealing with her gut, but nothing shifted. And she was doing this and intense protocols. And Deana has a type of personality that tell her to do something and she'll do it. So it wasn't for lack of trying at all. I see the effort that you put in. But what we're going to talk about today are some big turning points and aha moments in her journey, which are going to be really, really impactful. Because a lot of times people will have these turning points at the end of the program, or sometimes people don't even have these aha moments. So I think it'd be really helpful depending on where you're at in your journey. If you're just getting started, maybe you're in the Love Your Skin program, but there's definitely going to be some big pearls in what we're chatting about today. So thank you so much, Deana, for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. So to get started, I always like to do a little bit of a brief before. So can you share a little bit about your eczema, either growing up or your journey before the program?
Yeah, so I feel like a lot of people can relate to this. My eczema started pretty much as a baby, and then continued into childhood. I remember being, 5 or 6 years old, and my mom taking me to dermatologists, and they would give me just pretty much at that time, it was just creams. I think they gave me probably hydrocortisone cream. They never gave me anything crazy steroid cream, but just the basic stuff. And yeah, I just had rashes on the inside of my arms, the back of my legs. And I would also have weird things, I would break out in hives randomly. I have distinct memories of being a child and being covered in hives and my whole family being what's wrong with you? And I was allergic to everything, cats, dogs, stuff outside. So I was the classic, I just had everything going on as a child. And then moving into teenage years, pretty much I have very little memory of eczema being a problem as a teenager. It was kind of everything cleared up. It was kind of a quiet period, nothing going on with that. And then I kind of reared up again in my very early 20s, around 20, 21, 22. I had this sudden resurgence of rashes that kind of came out of nowhere. And at the time I was in college and in this crazy relationship, and a lot was going on in my life. And the last thing I was going to focus on was my health and getting to the bottom of it. So I just went the route of getting steroid cream. And it was this big tub of, I don't remember the name of it, but it was a higher strength than I'd taken before. And the doctor was just, put it all over your body for a week, and then you should get better. So I was cool. And I did it for a week and I got better. And I was great, that's awesome. I can put this behind me and move on with my life. So that was kind of that one little incident. And then moving into my mid-20s, pretty much didn't have much of a problem with rashes. I was super busy. I was traveling overseas, living the whole expat life, traveling. And I would looking back now, I can see all these little things that were off. I had digestive issues that I just ignored, or was oh, everyone has digestive issues living overseas. I always had a reason for what was going on. And then randomly I'd have little, just tiny little rashes would come up on the inside of my arm. And I kept that tub of steroid cream from my early 20s, and I would take it with me, and I would just apply a tiny bit on every sporadic time it would happen. And then it would be gone the next day. And that was my maintenance. And it was expired by 10 years or something, and I would still use it. Anyways, but yeah, so that was basically, I'm sure that's not healthy, but that was my 20s. And I mean, if you were to talk to me then, I would say, I'd probably tell you I had eczema as a kid, and it's not really an issue now. I'm pretty much healthy. Then kind of fast forward to last year. So it would have been the spring or the start of 2021 is kind of like my hasn't been well yet picture, kind of where everything started for me. And it just, it started so fast and furious, like out of nowhere. It was like January 1st, I started with like extreme facial swelling, like my eyes just swelled up like 5 times their size. And then that slowly changed into like face rashes that went all the way down my arms, like intense, like red rashes that I'd never seen before, like crazy. And that was the beginning of just all the craziness. So at the time I don't know how much detail you want me to, there's so much to go through, but like at the time I was living in Hawaii and I was living in what I found out later was a moldy apartment. So at the time I'm thinking, okay, mold definitely might be playing a part here. So I moved away from the moldy apartment, moved out of Hawaii, and my rashes calmed down within like a week. But they were definitely not gone. Like I was still like never quite the same. And from there onward, it was this snowball kind of like circular trap of like going in circles where the rashes would just come back like worse and worse and worse. And in the meantime of all this, I was determined this time, because I was a little bit older and a little bit wiser, like I'm not going to just grab steroids and lather myself with it anymore. Like I need to get to the bottom of what's going on and what all these little warning signs have been through my life. So like the one thing for me was I was determined to do it naturally. I just didn't know how to do it. I didn't know exactly like what direction to find that help in. So I started with a kinesiologist, and he put me on a lot of different supplements that I wasn't seeing any result from. In fact, I was just getting more and more like constipated. Like I could not even go to the bathroom for a while. And then when I left Hawaii, I switched to more of an IV therapy doctor. She specialized in IVs. And she was also the one that did a blood test on me. It was my first comprehensive blood test. And she, from the blood test, believed that Lyme was a big issue for me. So she was kind of treating me for Lyme, and she felt like every health problem I had seen had come from the Lyme. So, so then I was doing like intensive IV therapy twice a week for like 6 weeks. And again, noticed like minimal changes, but not anything drastic. And it was very short-lived, because as soon as I stopped the IV therapy, within a month, my rashes like exploded everywhere and got a lot worse. So then I moved on to another Lyme specialist who kind of focused more on like some extensive detoxes. Like I did 2 extreme liver flushes that were the worst experiences ever. And just literally like made my rashes worse. Like I went in full throttle, like, okay, this is going to help. And he really was like, this should help. It helps everyone. And I just went the other direction, and everything got worse. So I'm like, okay, everything I try is like making me sicker and I don't know what to do. So that was like the better part of all the way from like January to October. I was just in this cycle of trying to get help. And it felt like every direction I was turning in, I was just getting sicker. And it was like the most defeating feeling, because I would tell this to everyone I knew, like I'll literally do anything to get better. I just need someone to guide me in the right direction. And I don't know who that person is. I don't know where to go. And so that kind of brings me up to the start of the program, which I started kind of I think it was the end of October, early November. So that's a long answer to your question.
No, that was good. And thank you for sharing all of that, because for people that might be in your space, or for people that are just dealing with rashes in their 20s and it's manageable, I think it's always good to see, okay, if you don't do anything about it, right, all these symptoms, like you had the classic gut symptoms, and you didn't mention it, but like there's hormone symptoms, you had all these little red flags that were just, okay, this is normal, I'm older, I'm traveling, and you just kind of ignored it. And then, when we started talking, I remember at the beginning, you were like, our first call, I was like, okay, yeah, classic eczema, classic, yeah, normal. And you're like, what? I didn't know if you'd even be able to help me. You're like, what?
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
I do. I literally was like, I was so sure in our first phone call that you were going to be like, okay, this is like so complicated. Like, I don't want to touch this case. Like, this is just, I thought I was going to scare you away, one. And then two, when you were coming telling me this isn't, I was convinced I had some like incurable disease. Like I was, by that time, I was just like, I was like researching programs that like dealt with literally like mystery illnesses that were like, $20,000. And I'm like, should I just do it? Because nobody knows what's wrong with me. And then I come to you and you're like, this is just classic eczema. And there's a lot of reasons I can already see it going on with you. And I'm like, what? Okay. So I was shocked when you said that.
Yeah. And I was like, to be honest, I like the challenging cases because I can utilize my mentors.
Yeah, I do remember you saying that too. I'm like, okay, well, good. If you're like not scared by this challenge, then that was a really good sign to me.
So at that point, did you have any hesitations, and what was going through your head?
Yeah, so I should kind of backtrack and say I first came across your program actually back in Hawaii at the beginning of the story in January when I first kind of got sick, because at that time, I was like researching all this eczema stuff. So my Facebook feed was throwing all this like eczema stuff at me, 'cause, that's what it does. And so of course yours came up and it piqued my interest. Like I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like I hadn't seen this yet. And so I checked out a few things but I am like the most skeptical person when it comes to signing up for anything. And all of my, like, this is a scam. This person doesn't know what they're doing. I'm not going to waste my money. Like I just had all of these red flags going off at once. And I'm like, no, I'm seeing a well-known kinesiologist. Like I just think like that who I'm seeing like definitely knows what they're doing. But it was funny because in the following months, I kept seeing your stuff on Facebook come up. And so I watched one of your seminars. And I'm like, all right, I just want to hear what she has to say. And I'm watching it. I'm thinking, okay, she really does sound like she knows what she's talking about. But I still was like, no, because at that point I was seeing the Lyme doctor and I'm like, no, like, I don't even really have eczema. Like it's Lyme. Like she would be so confused. And I just like one excuse after another. And yeah, so it was just funny because it was a long process before I even reached out to you. I was just kind of like watching this stuff, being really skeptical, thinking like, I'm not falling for it. And then it was literally like I hit rock bottom with like I blew through every resource I had, and I was at the point where I'm like, I don't know who else to go to. And at that point, I was trying to find an eczema specialist because I'm like, well, maybe there's like a functional doctor who does just like skin rashes, because that's my biggest thing, like, that I could visibly see. And it was really hard to find, at least for me. Like I was doing a lot of research, and there'd be a lot of functional medicine doctors who did all kinds of things, or like a very broad spectrum, but I never came across anyone who was like, this is like my special field. So that drew me back to you again, because I'm like, okay, she's the only one that's like specifying in this. So maybe like I should just find out more. And that's when I finally reached out, and you agreed to, sit down, talk to me, have a long conversation with me, and then with my husband. And I'm like, all right, this hasn't happened yet with any doctor I've talked to, like sat down and talked so long and answered all my questions. And so, it went from like 100% like not going there to 100% feeling like this was my one option, just to take it.
Yeah. And thanks for sharing that. And thank you for the honesty. Because I think, like it's good to have your guard up, right? And we all have it up because we're all being sold to. But then, you do end up getting to that place where you hit rock bottom. And that's usually when people reach out, unfortunately, when it gets bad. But one thing, with your journey, and I remember talking about this to you, is that, you've gone to see specific specialists for the different things. And when you specialize in one thing, that's a problem. So whether it's mold, if it's Lyme, if it's Candida, every single person's problem in the world is that. And it's a bias, right? Which to them, that's because what they see all the time. But if you have that broader picture of like eczema, for example, like, when we talk about it, it's like inflammation caused by something else that's happening in your body. So when you have that kind of bigger view, that could be helpful. So
yeah.
for
And I had
anybody that's
literally
feeling-
experienced that too, like
yeah,
that
yeah,
pigeonholing in everyone I had seen so far. So when you said that, I'm thinking, yes, I've definitely experienced that firsthand.
yeah. And so like from your experience as well, you know, going all into every different approach, then you can, and I think this is probably a little bit of a snowball effect of when we're talking about, you know, not trusting your skin or having this dialogue around your skin, is you tried so much already. So it was interesting. And I remember when we first spoke, I can't remember exactly how you said it, but you'd said that you had detached yourself from your skin, like, and your body, like it was something else that was happening. And I found that really interesting. And I was just like, I have a lot of compassion, because when you get to that point, when you've tried so much, put like almost a year, I think it was like 8 or 9 months of doing intensive treatments, spending a lot of money. And like, you know, it's a pretty debilitating state, you know, when you're feeling like you're reacting to the whole world. So, you know, you can create this dialogue just from going through that journey of not thinking it's possible, you know? So yeah.
I was in a rough place. Yeah. And I think looking back, I think that was almost partially my protective mechanism of like, I actually had to like disassociate from my body because it was mentally, and I didn't have any tools to help my whole mental state at the time. So it was just like, I had to shut off, like I had to disassociate to just like survive at that point.
All right. So let's fast forward to some of the aha moments in the program. Because it was like, Deanna's case was more the challenging cases because there was a lot going on and it was more complex. So there's like, we did foundational work and then just looking at the basics, right? Going through the gut, obviously the brain skin connection, which I do remember you saying, you're like, I remember you talking about this like at the beginning, you're like, I'll deal with it after.
Yes, that was like the least. I'm like, that's nice. I'll like file that on like the low bottom of the things I need to worry about right now.
Yeah. I have bigger problems.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was a bit of a process just going through that. And it, you know, with your personality, it's like, okay, I'm doing these things, like I'm not seeing a result right away. So yeah, can you walk through just what that experience was like for you?
Yeah. So it was just interesting starting the program because I think like a lot of people probably can relate to this. Like I was just ready to be like, I will spend 24 hours a day working on, like, just tell me what to do. Like I had my pen ready and I'm like ready to go. And I just remember in the first couple of weeks, like the biggest thing you kept emphasizing to me was slower is faster, and just like time is going to be a good thing for you, and just like slow down, like slow the whole thing down. And that was so counterintuitive to just my mental state and how I thought things needed to go, which was like, we've got to like run forward and like pack on all the supplements. And so that was just a huge different perspective that I had to slowly kind of get used to and realize just the validity in that, like that is really the best way to go forward. And I think, yeah, like, and again, it's like the mental, all of the brain skin stuff was definitely not a high priority for me. But I would say that like it kept, because it's such a big part of the program, it kept coming up in every, like I was going through the course modules and all of the things, and it just kept coming up. Like you couldn't ignore that being like something you had to focus on. And so I just remember at one point, I was almost like, I came to the point where I'm like, okay, I had this dialogue with myself. I'm like, okay, you came in this program saying you'd do anything it took, but you're like really resisting this brain skin stuff because part of you thinks that it's just a waste of time and like there's other stuff more important, and like what's that really going to do? So it's like I really had to go like, okay, you're supposed to be all in. This program is focusing on this. Like if you're really all in, you've got to give it a try. So that was when I just kind of started to force myself to emphasize that more. And it wasn't overnight, and that was what was hard. It wasn't like I did deep breathing one day and like felt amazing. It was like nothing's happening, and it was just like this constant feeling of like, is it working? Am I just wasting my time? This is not, it just wasn't intuitive for me to do that. So
Yeah.
it was really hard in the beginning. And I think the biggest turning point for me was, and it was probably about 3 months in before I really started to see like a definite change in my skin and my overall health. And it took, I feel like it took a lot of weeks to get there, but when it happened, it was like very definitive. It was like, oh my gosh, like I'm healing. Like what is going on? And it was amazing. And that was the first time that I was like, okay, all these things I've just been doing with just the trust that it's going to work, but not really like, but always that voice, like, is it really working? For the first time, I'm like, okay, no, like this is working. Like this is really working. And then I started to get excited about it because I was seeing the change that was happening in my body. So yeah, that was probably the biggest shift for me. And I think just the place I was in and that time, I had to see a shift in my skin for me to be able to make that mental shift as well.
Yep. And that, like, it makes sense after everything that you tried and that worked, but that is very, very good words of wisdom. Slower is faster. Like me as well. I'm the same personality type. It's like, all right, give it to me. I want all the results right now.
Yes. Yes. And I still have to remember, like, all these things I still like, they're still not intuitive to me. Like I still have to work on all of that stuff. And I still have to remind myself that time is your friend. You have to slow down. And yeah, like that's something I still have to, like, I have it written in my bathroom mirror, time is your friend, because for so long time was working against me. Like the more time that was going on, the sicker I was getting. It was just, yeah, it was like this loop. And so just rewiring that to like, no, time actually is what's healing you now. Like it's the best thing for you. It was such a huge shift and something I'm still learning to embrace better, but yeah.
Slower is faster, time is your friend. Those were big, impactful ones, and how you're embracing the process and the brain skin connection. So what was your next aha moment and turning point for you?
Yeah, I think there were, so I don't know who said it. It was either you or someone in the program, but they, I think it was you actually. You had mentioned something along the lines of the body is always trying to stay in the state to heal, or it's always trying to stay regulated. It's not trying to like disintegrate and fall apart. And for me personally, that was so helpful to hear, because at the point that I heard that, I had such a negative view of my body and my health. And I mean, I literally had this self-talk where I was like, my body hates me, it's working against me, like it's just trying to destroy me, it's just trying to kill itself, it's trying to destroy itself, like I like get with the program, like I would just be so like negative. And it was never anything about my body even like trying to get back on track. So to hear you say, I'm pretty sure it was you that said it. I mean, for you to say that the way your body works is it's actually trying to be regulated, like that's its natural state. It was a game changer for me, because it was the first time I thought, okay, no, actually, like my body's working with me. Like it's not trying to destroy me. It just needs some help. Like we're friends, like we want the same thing. And it kind of sounds silly to say that, but for me, just in my mind, to re-look at that whole thing and actually feel like, yeah, we were on the same page, me and my body, not literally like it was trying to kill me.
Yeah. And that's big because, like, you know, understanding your whole history, you know, you tried everything already. So it's like, okay, why is it working against me? I'm giving it what it should need. But there were just some pieces of the puzzle that were missing. And I do remember we're chatting about like the body is actually built to stay in the state of homeostasis, which is balance. And so it will do whatever it takes to stay within that balance until you start noticing all those symptoms and until they start snowballing, and then it loses resources. And so with you and like, because we had similar conversations quite a few weeks where it's like, okay, let's look at the big picture, break it down. And it's like, okay, so all of a sudden you had all of these diagnoses, like the Lyme and the mold and these overgrowths, all of this was coming up. And then the body just lost resiliency and it couldn't do it anymore, which is also really like quite common with mold as well. So when you
Yeah.
can understand, okay, it got to this point because it was under a lot of stress. So, being in that stress state is physical as well. It's not just mental, but it's connected. And then when, it's, you can have these parts of you that think, one's the enemy, but when you can realize you're all on the same team, your body, your mind, what's happening in your head, even if it's challenging, that you're on the same team, it's so helpful.
Yeah. And that's when I started feeling, or just being kinder to myself, I think, and that's not my personality too is very like sarcastic and just like, my freaking body. And I just like always say really negative things. And I do remember in the beginning of the program, you would routinely kind of like call me out on it and be like, okay, can we reword the way you just said that to just nicer words almost? But it really started to sink in that like, okay, this self-talk does matter. And the way that I view my body as a whole does matter. And I think changing that viewpoint to it's actually my friend and it's working with me just changed the way that I just became much kinder and compassionate to myself that I didn't feel towards before. So it helped a lot.
Yeah. And that's powerful. And like you said, it's like, if you just give it the right tools. So if you can help regulate your nervous system, get it into a state to heal, understand that your body is your friend, and give it the right food, give it rest. And for you, like supplements and, understanding, trying to fix all the imbalances that were happening in your body. When you can get the body in a state to heal, you're giving it resources it needs, then you'll see the difference. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And the thing, like with your picture too, because it was allergy season and that's trigger season. So you had a big flare around that at that time too, which is hard.
Yeah.
And so, you can kind of spiral into these different states. Like, am I going to go back there and that?
Yeah.
So it is a work in progress, but it is something that you'll be able to see yourself bounce back quicker and quicker. And you'll start noticing that shift, which is the aim of the game. You can start understanding, because it was always like, okay, the missing piece, like, what is it? There's all these pieces, but I don't know which one it is. Like, where's the piece?
That was
like,
that was a struggle for so long. Yeah. Because I think I just always felt like it had to be one thing. It was like, okay. And I would say to you over and over again, like, so, okay, what are we thinking? Like, what's the thing that's wrong with me? And it was like, there's so many pieces and it's a complex picture and it's not just one thing. It's this like whole myriad of things that are working together, but they'll slowly come together over time again being like a big factor in all of this. But I was just through the whole thing looking for like that one diagnosis. So like, okay, how do I say in one sentence? I remember saying to you, how do I say in one sentence what's wrong with me? And you're like, okay.
Your bucket's full.
Yes, exactly. That's probably exactly what you Yeah. That's funny.
But yeah, I do have compassion because it is hard when there's so much happening in your head. There's so much going on. So sometimes you just need some sort of a narrative and you just need, okay, what is actually happening? And the thing is that I understand that part of your brain too, because it's very like outcome driven, right? Okay, so
yes,
what's the actual problem? But that's also something that we had to work on too, that it's just okay, this is the process. And what if there isn't like a specific end goal that we have to work towards, and what if it's okay if it's not perfect? And like I have to honor you.
That was huge.
Being on the call today, because you're still on your healing journey. So for the perfectionist parts, to do an interview like this when you're not like quote unquote in your perfect state, which you're in a very great state compared to where you were. That's big. So definitely want to congratulate you on that. But
no, I remember you asked me earlier, like a couple months earlier, if I wanted to share some stuff, and I was like, no, no, I can't. Like wait till towards the end when I'm all better. But now it just shows how just learning like what healing really means. It's not just about like this date on the calendar is like, okay, now you're better. It's just not how it works. It's, it goes beyond the 6-month program. It's just a lifestyle change and healing the body from the inside. It's going to take time. It's like, I think so much of it is changing the way I think about medicine. Cause it's like, just since we're like young, we go to the doctor and we're given a pill and you feel better. And that's how you know it worked. And if you don't feel better, then you know it doesn't work. And it's very linear. But doing it naturally where you're actually getting your body to heal itself it just doesn't go that way. It's not like from point A to point B. It's like up and down and all over the place, but you're still healing. And that to me was it just took so long. And I still like have to go back and be like, I still have to remind myself that, because I'll get stuck in like a bad skin day, or like the allergies came up for me this season and just fell right back into that way of thinking, okay, am I really getting better? Like maybe I'm just in one big circle and I used to be in like little circles. Like maybe I'm just like in a bigger circle now. But now I do have so much more knowledge. So it's like, no, like that's not actually what's happening. It's this process of healing. And I'm way far ahead than I was before. And in 6 months from now, I'll be further than I was now. In 6 months, like it's just this long ongoing journey. And it just I really believe it just keeps getting better because you just keep getting healthier. But it takes time. That's like, I keep like, time's like my big theme now. It's like, it just takes a lot of time. Yeah.
And it's like with my journey as well, like I didn't ever think I'd like eat gluten and dairy, because like for me, it would just like tip me off all the time. So I just like kind of made amends with it. And like, I didn't want to eat it because I didn't feel good. And then now as continued healing, and people always ask me, how long did it take you? This is like, there's no end date. Like I didn't do things efficiently, but it did take me years, where now I can like mow down a pizza, but it does take time, but if you do give your body the resources it needs, and like the food, the time, and being able to regulate your nervous system, which is such a big one, it does. Yeah. Well, thank you, Deana, for sharing all of this. It's been really lovely chatting. And it's great. And I really do honor you for doing this, because it is outside your comfort zone. But it's really great to hear you say that it is a journey, and that it is continuous, because that's big for your mindset. Cool thing is that when you get to the point, like when you feel like you have a bit more control, is that, okay, I understand that this is a trigger. I can see my rashes go down quicker and quicker each time. And you can notice those changes. And I feel like I'm just like kind of entering that stage where I'm starting to have some major pieces put together, and I'm kind of able to like know what to expect a little bit more. But like I'm just moving into that stage, which again shows like how long it can take. But so I think it really does just get better over time, and it gets easier. So if there's somebody at the beginning of their healing journey, or maybe have been going around in circles, kind of chasing their tail like you have, do you have any words of wisdom for them? For like those who I guess maybe haven't joined the program and are like exactly where I was at, just going in circles like crazy. I can only share what I would share with myself. Like I've thought about this many times, like if I could go back in time to the beginning of the year and if I would have done anything differently, like literally hands down, I would have called you like right away and just started the program and got it going. And like, I've actually had to like work on that too. Like, okay, you can't like live with regret. Like time happened how it was supposed to happen, but there's been so many times I'm like, if I had just could have gone back and just trusted her the first time and like gone with it, I would have been like so much further along. All that to say, like, that's what I would have done for myself if I had the chance to do it again. And I think, if I ever had a friend or family member struggling with this, like I would have absolutely no hesitation to be like, check out the program. Like nothing but good things. And for anyone who's in the program and having a tough time, I think, it's hard because I've been in those hard times. I think, and this sounds cliche, but trust the process, I guess, because, it does get better. And I know, like, I feel like I just keep talking about time this whole interview, but it does take time. Like if you feel like you're stuck and you're hitting a wall, like it's going to get better. It really is going to get better.
And this is coming from someone like the most skeptical person in the world who, yeah, it took me a long time to see that myself. And so, yeah, it will get better for you too. Yeah, I believe that.
Those are good, encouraging words and words of wisdom, because it does take time to get into that dis-ease state where the body isn't functioning well. So it takes time to heal.
Yeah,
It
that's
does
another
take
good thing
compassion.
to remember.
Yeah. Yeah. And it takes compassion because your body's been through a lot. It's trying. It just hasn't had like the time, the space, and the resources to be able to heal. Yeah. Well, thank you, Deana. It's always a pleasure chatting.
Yeah, thank you. It's fun.
So thank you so much. And if there is anybody that's struggling, if you do have any questions for Deana, you can pop them in chat. And if you are interested in the program, you can reach out to one of the teams, or you can type in "Let's Chat" below, and one of the girls can reach out and give you some resources to get started. Thank you so much, Deana.
Bye.
Bye.